Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Earth Story release. I was able to get the second half of these figures. I had quite a few reviews up, 6 I believe, from the first round, and now we have the second round of these figures thanks to my good buddy Dino Mike Mac, who scored these for me in Hong Kong and sent them my way. And we have one that is really cool that we're going to start with as far as these new reviews. This is the Dunkleosteus, and this one looks super cool, actually, like a lot nicer in person than I was expecting, and then the better than the original promo images and stuff that I had seen of it. Well, I don't even know if that you could consider them promo images. I pretty much just discovered these by other people taking images of them and showing them up online, but again, I think this one looks a good bit better than I was expecting it to, which is definitely a massive plus. Some of these figures, these Earth Story releases, have been kind of hit or miss, so pretty happy to see that this one looks fairly decent. One thing that's interesting about this is rather than the boxes that we had seen them with before, we no longer have the boxes now. We actually have tags that are kind of hanging off of them, one of which has like a really cool skull here, which you can see, and then we have Earth Story, again, ancient creature, which is not spelled correctly, but then you can see we do have a barcode and everything down here, as well as some more information once we turn the tag around. And I don't know if we can, yes, we can definitely get these off. Okay, so let's go ahead and get them off so I don't have to review it with them in the way. There we go. So one thing to take note of when it comes to the Dunkleosteus right away is the fact that I think this one is hollow. It has a very light feel to it, and I was not expecting that. I kind of expected it to have, a similar feel to a lot of the other figures in the line where they're a little bit heavier, whereas this one feels like super lightweight, so I'm going to go ahead and say that it's probably a hollow figure. But when we get nice and close, we take a look at the head sculpt. You can see the head sculpt looks pretty well done. You've got the eyes sculpted out. They're also painted with a brown and then a black pupil, and you can see the majority of the head of the Dunkleosteus is a blackish tone with like a gray dry brushing. The fine detail in this area isn't anything to rave about, but it looks alright for what it is. It's just not super impressive. As you move down here into the lower side of the Dunkleosteus, you'll start to see some light grayish tones pick up, which I also think look pretty decent. Again, the detail isn't mind-blowing, but it looks fairly decent for what it is. One thing that I don't know how I feel about when it comes to the figure, first of all, we do have an articulated jaw, which is nice, and I'm trying to think back if any of the other figures had any articulation. I don't remember if they did. I kind of feel like they didn't, but it's been a little bit since I had taken a look at them. But this one does, so it's really neat to actually have an articulated jaw on the figure. But again, right here it looks really nice, but once we open it, you start to see this pink kind of pick up. And, in some instances, I feel like it kind of looks natural, but at the same time kind of looks out of place and awkward. So again, I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but it is there, and it is, of course, something I wanted to point out. But once we come into the mouth, you can see the detail in the mouth looks all right. Again, nothing overly mind-blowing, but decent for what it is. We can see the bony plates here on the front of the face of or I should say on the front of the mouth of our Dunkleosteus, that area that many people actually confuse with being teeth, when in fact they are not. And they're even kind of painted out similar to what you would see as far as teeth go, but again, not actually teeth. But they are painted with a light grayish tone, and they do have a little bit of a satin shine to them, but the figure as a whole actually has a satin shine. Like overall, it has a very nice strong wet look, which of course, being a fish, is something you would want to see. As you lead down, we can see the fins are sculpted out pretty decently. There's also some nice kind of vibrant bluish green sort of tones right here, which I really like. We also have a darker tone that sort of outlines them, similar to the tone we have up there in the head. As you move back, you can see more of those really vibrant greenish tones, but there are also some like blue spots that pick up that you can see moving through the side of the Dunkleosteus. We see more of those blue spots up there in the dorsal fin, and my camera apparently does not like that color so close to the screen. But as you move along the side, you can see kind of like some scoot-like sort of scales following along the side of the Dunkleosteus, as well as some fairly decent looking, quite vibrant kind of scales here moving along the majority of the body of our Dunkleosteus. Up there on that dorsal fin, you can see some fairly decent detail again. We also have that dark tone outlining the top of that fin. As you move down here, you can see more of that dark tone leading in through the course of this fin, with some light grays following along the back of that fin. And we have the majority of the underbelly also colored with that light grayish tone. As we lead back, you can see a really nice looking tail sculpt. You've got a very nice curve to the tail. You also have some nice curvatures to the fin as well, which looks really nice, kind of giving you the feeling of it just sort of flowing through the water, which is definitely a nice touch. Again, that darker tone outlining the fin. You also see more of it up here, as well as the greenish tone, and then more of the blue sort of spots and stuff. You do have a really nice curve to the tail, which looks really good, and you can see a curve to the body in general as you move through. As far as the opposing side, you're going to pretty much see the same thing. Of course, it's not like any sort of like a drastic difference from one side to the other when it comes to this one. For the most part, it looks, again, fairly straightforward with just some nice curvatures to the body about halfway through. But it does look pretty cool. Again, I will say it's probably one of the better figures in this line as a whole. As far as a size goes, for a length from the head to the tail, about 9¼ inches, maybe even slightly over that, or around 23.5 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point is definitely the tail at just a hair over 5.5 inches, or also a hair over about 14 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Earth Story Dunkleosteus. And you can see, again, it's got a pretty decent size to it. It's not gigantic or anything like that, but definitely fairly nicely sized. And for another comparison, we have the absolutely incredible, and I will say superior, version of the Dunkleosteus from PNSO, and you can see when it comes to the PNSO version, it is fairly similar in size, but just a little bit smaller. But then we have the Collect A version of the Dunkleosteus here, and as you can see, it is actually fairly similar to that version, but I would say the Earth Story version might be slightly smaller now compared to the Collect A release. And then one final comparison, we have the Collect A Deluxe Dimetrodon and the Schleich Diabloceratops. Now, I brought these guys in as totally random comparisons because I really wanted to bring in the Schleich Dunkleosteus, but it is apparent to me that I put my Schleich stuff in my storage bin, and that is the storage bin that I broke the door on, and I cannot get into, unfortunately. But I will say, as far as, like, you know, from my own personal memory, this Dunkleosteus is fairly similar in size to the Schleich version, being just a little bit bigger, if I remember correctly. It's definitely a little larger than the Schleich release, and I did want to kind of give you guys that information because I know that the Schleich release was a very popular version of this species when it had come out. So again, if you don't have the Schleich version, then hopefully you have one of these figures, or at least one of the other figures that I have shown off here in these comparisons. So this Earth Story Dunkleosteus is a pretty cool figure, honestly. I would say definitely one of the best in the line overall. I don't know if I would say it's the best as a whole. I would say that the Paraceratherium is probably my favorite out of all of them up until this point, or maybe the Daeodon. It's kind of a toss-up there. But this Dunkleosteus is not far behind. I think sculpt-wise, it's very nicely done. It doesn't have quite the amount of fine detail that you might see on a lot of other prehistoric releases nowadays, or in general on other Dunkleosteus figures, but it has some fairly decent detail. It also has some nice life to it with the, you know, curvatures of the fins and everything, which looks really nice. And the coloration is definitely a little different from any other Dunkleosteus that I have, and that's definitely nice to see. The coloration is also pretty smooth as far as the application of the paint. Maybe not the best dry brushing in the head area, but it looks alright for what it is. I also really quite like the gloss coat on the figure, because I think the gloss coat definitely does help to give it the nice wet look you would want to see, and helps the figure to really quite shine, you know, no pun intended. But as a whole, it's a pretty fun figure. It also does have an articulated jaw, which is actually pretty neat. But it is a pretty fun figure, and of course, I would say worth picking up. So if you are interested, I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase this right now from Lana Time Shop. So make sure you check that link, grab this if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.